So it was about 2 months where things started to I just was so unsettled. And real, my first real symptom was just incredible nausea.
Right.
Like, what is that? Such incredible nausea and an inability to fall asleep. Now, when I speak to women and I hear those symptoms right away, it's so normal. It is such a huge red flag, so to speak, as to what's going on. But then we didn't know what it was.
That's like, I feel like that's not like the typical, like if someone says I'm nauseous and I can't sleep, it's like Pepto-Bismol and some Advil PM, call it a day. So like, because maybe the stereotype for postpartum depression is you're crying and you can't get out of bed.
Right.
But that's not how it manifested with you.
Not only with me, I think many people will find in the frum community specifically, anxiety is way more prevalent than depression. The level of anxiety that women are living with in general, forget postpartum, just in general, with everything that they're managing is pretty high.
Same from women.
Yeah.
We've had a number of different therapists on this podcast in the past, and like we always try to like get a statistic out of them about like the anxiety rate from Jews over, non-religious or non-affiliated, because of like the Yom Tovim, the family time. Everyone loves family, but it's like a lot.
It's a lot. I mean, and you're touching on a different point also just in general, and I guess we'll get to it in terms of what we could do to help women.
Yeah.
I can't necessarily say prevent this, but to minimize the difficulty of it. And one of the biggest things is the level of perfection that we from women kind of, I would know, society dictates, but really we take it upon ourselves because at the end of the day, we have control over it, not society. But there is a tremendous pressure to present a certain picture of having it all together, and especially young girls today who are working or in college, supporting husbands, or just managing too much.
Right.
I imagine the gender of the baby matters in terms of the events that immediately follow from having a baby.
It's a boy. It's like Shalom Zachar, bris, like
right. Yeah. So there's so many moving pieces. There's so many different factors. I guess we don't go in any specific order. We could touch upon a bunch of different things at the same time. But, for some women, there will not be any reason as to why it seems she's suffering. She could have an uneventful pregnancy and an easy delivery, and boom, out of nowhere.
But in your case, you did have a boy, correct?
I did have a boy, Baruch Hashem. Mm-hmm. And he was my least complicated delivery of all of them. It was, maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu's gift to me before what was to come. But no, it wasn't a complicated delivery. I, Baruch Hashem, had a good pregnancy. We weren't prepared for this, to say the least.
Yeah, you said you're at home, you're feeling nauseous, can't sleep, anxious. Do you think it's anything, or like what's the next steps you kind of take from there?
So the next steps in my minds were like a little bit of a niggling. Is this what they talk about when they talk about postpartum? Nah, that can't be what this is. I went to my general practitioner. He, just prescribed something to help with the anxiety portion of it. There was never this person who looked at me and said, by the way, you're suffering from postpartum depression. You need help. And this is where you need to go. I didn't have that. So it was a long, convoluted journey of very difficult medications, unfortunately, that I probably should never have been on. I've said it, I'll say it again. It was difficult. It was very difficult. My husband was left trying to, hold down the fort. We were, Baruch Hashem, very fortunate to have a baby nurse. I'm not sure what would have been without her. So it wasn't because financially it was the easiest thing for us to do, but there was no choice. Someone had to take care of the baby,
right,
and someone had to take care of the family. But really, I think the point of why we're here today is to talk about what happened after that. I would say it was about 8 months into my suffering, 6 months, 8 months into my suffering, which when you stop and think about it is a long time. It's a long time for a mother not to be functioning the way she should, not to be able to care for her family. And it's hard to wrap your head around, because as a woman going through it, you feel everything you've worked so hard to cultivate just slipping through your fingers. Mm-hmm. And for what? For what?
It's like a ghost.
It's a ghost. Unfortunately, there are people out there who are dealing with serious illnesses, and you see their families, and you know that the community has to step in and help out, and there have to be, people taking care of the kids and making dinners, because it's visual. It makes sense. This is what? Why can't I take care of my family? And this is supposed to be the happiest time in my life. So after a very, very difficult few months, I'm not sure, I don't remember if it was my husband or my sister in a moment of desperation that Googled postpartum depression and we were introduced to an organization in Lakewood by the name of Yad Rachel. And I have to say,
can I
yes,
stop you just for a moment?
Please.
Before you delve into what you've discovered and the solution and how you developed it further, I want to just take a moment to empower those that might be experiencing something similar and to shed light on the reality that, as you described, there isn't always a reason that explains why a person is feeling this way. And the nature of postpartum depression, as I'm learning from you, is that it can't always be attributed to some complication or some, scenario in one's life that is contributing and exacerbating this issue. It's just the actual postpartum depression on its face. And I think knowing that eliminates some of the shame from people that would be experiencing this without being able to assign a reason. And I would just invite you to elaborate on that aspect of the anxiety, of the depression, where there is no reason behind it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's number one also when speaking to a woman, the need to reiterate, it's nothing you did. You did nothing wrong. You did nothing wrong. Because as a frum woman, they'll right away, did I overwork myself? Was it something I did during pregnancy? How could I have avoided this? You did nothing wrong. It's not your fault. There's nothing to be ashamed of. And yes, with help and Mirz Hashem, you will get better. But that piece of removing the shame from it is so important. And it's so sad in a sense that when you do speak to women, like you said, 1 in 5, they say 1 in 5 to 7. So 18 to 20%, it's a huge number. But yet every woman that you speak to, the same refrain will be, why only me? Why aren't my friends experiencing this? Like, what's wrong with me that I can't manage? Why is everybody else able to manage? Now, everybody else isn't able to manage, but we do a very good job of putting on a show that we are all managing. That loneliness, that isolation is so poisonous in a sense, because that's part of what holds a person back from recovering, is just using all that energy trying to understand why it happened, what they did wrong, instead of using that energy to just accept what's happening and try to recover.
I can imagine it's exhausting to try to also keep a secret from people, from a community. Again, like you mentioned, it's the happiest time. You just had a baby, and especially when it's a boy, there's a Sham Zachar, there's bris, and everyone's,
and especially when it's a girl.
Also, when it's a girl, I listen. I have 2 girls. Like I'm a girl fan right now. So, but like, there's just a lot of happiness and simcha surrounding it, and when you're not feeling that, right, in your case, in that moment, I imagine there's a lot of perhaps you don't want people to find out. You want everyone to just, you're yourself is not sure what's going on. You don't want people to make assumptions or figure out what's going on. How exhausting is that part of it what was that for you?
So exhausting. And I'll even go as far to say that in the beginning, I don't know if it's fair to use the word gaiva a little bit, but I probably did have a little bit of that of, this isn't no geya to me. It's very nice to be understanding about the mental health community, but that's not shaykh to me. There was a little bit of that. Like, I could definitely be supportive to someone else going through something like this, but this wouldn't happen to me, right? So, the humbling, what's the right word? The
humility?
Humblingness, the humility that comes with it, but the humbling process of it.
Whatever.
Also, is the wrong word, though.
Humility is the wrong word?
No, yeah, that's not the word she was looking for.
Oh.
Right. It's knocking you off your pedestal, basically. Yeah. It's knocking you off.
Dignity. You're like holding on to dignity of like.
You're holding on to dignity, which a woman should always be allowed to hold on to. But within that dignity is the understanding that it's okay to struggle. It's okay to struggle. It is okay to reach out for help. I mean, that's hard. And I have to say that in the process of going through this, I learned 2 things that I learned a lot, but there's a tremendous grace in giving appropriately, and there's a grace in taking. And that to me was a tremendous lesson.